My husband has always been considerate and attentive to me. Yet when I got into a conflict with the original female lead, he used his internal force to push me away without any explanation and slapped me hard across the face. He made me apologize to her. Only then did I suddenly awaken to the fact that my husband is the devoted second male lead in this wuxia novel. In order to make the female lead believe he would no longer interfere in her love life, he casually married an orphan like me who has no father or mother. I looked at the lotus cake on the ground, crushed under the female lead's cloud brocade embroidered shoes. I took a deep breath. The next day, I left behind a divorce agreement and left without looking back. Ladies, today's story is the ultimate awakening from a toxic relationship. Welcome back to the tea room with Liue. Imagine working yourself to the bone to support your poor scholar husband, only for him to slap you across the face because you got mad at a rich girl for destroying your pastry stall. The kicker, he's not a poor scholar. He's the billionaire heir of a martial arts empire, and he only married you to prove to his childhood crush that he was moved on. Our girl doesn't cry or beg. She drops a divorce paper, hits the road, and ends up saving the most dangerous, gorgeous villain in the entire martial arts world. Let's dive right in, shall we? The third year of my marriage to Pei Jing, to supplement our meager household income, when the sky was still shrouded in morning mist, I would get up to steam the lotus cakes I'd made the night before, then carry them to the corner of the long street to sell. Actually, Pei Jing didn't agree to this at first. He was a down-and-out scholar who made his living copying books for bookshops, always feeling it was too hard for a woman to show her face in public. But when I was cleaning, I clearly saw the cloth shoes on his feet that were so worn they were almost torn through. Since we became husband and wife, this household should be supported by two people, not just him suffering hardships alone outside. Because he was born with refined and otherworldly looks and had upright character, the neighbors usually envied me, saying I'd picked up a husband who was like an immortal. Whenever I heard this, I would always laugh while covering my mouth, though he humbly said he was just an ordinary person who ate the same food as everyone else. His heart was filled with joy, until today. A woman in red, wielding a long whip and chasing a thief, swept past from the end of the long street. To gain leverage, she stepped right on my stall, flipping my entire stand over. My heart aching for the steamer baskets scattered on the ground, I quickly grabbed the corner of that woman's robe with sharp eyes and fast hands. I wanted her to pay for the damages, but what came at me instead was a domineering palm wind and a slap without any explanation, a smack sound. I was struck down to the ground, my eardrums buzzing, half my face instantly swelling up. And that man who rushed over using qinggong, afraid the woman in red would be startled, and thus ruthlessly struck me, was actually my husband, Pei Jing. Ladies, let's unpack this absolute nightmare of a scene. Our heroine, Zhang Wanning, wakes up before dawn every single day to make lotus cakes to sell on the street. She thinks her husband, Pei Jing, is a starving scholar. She eats scraps so he can have full meals. She is literally saving her pennies to buy him new shoes because his are falling apart. Then, a girl in red, Mu Qing, the female lead of this universe, comes flying through the market, steps on Wanning's stall, and crushes all her food into the dirt. When Wanning grabs her dress to demand payment for the ruined food, her sweet, gentle husband comes flying out of nowhere and slaps Wanning to the ground to protect the other woman. In Chinese web novels, we call this the devoted second male lead trope. Pei Jing is the ultimate simp for the main girl, but a complete nightmare of a husband. He married Wanning, a poor orphan, just to create a fake happy family persona, so his crush wouldn't feel guilty. He literally treats his wife as a prop. When Mu Qing complains that the crushed cake dirtied her expensive shoes, Pei Jing doesn't help his wife up. He scolds Wanning for being petty and uses his secret martial arts skills to fly across town to buy the other woman new shoes. For my real housewives, ladies, this is the equivalent of your husband maxing out your joint credit card to buy his ex a Birkin bag because she stepped in a puddle and then yelling at you for being upset about it. It is peak gaslighting. But that slap, it wakes Wanning up. She realizes she is just an NPC in their love story. She packs her bags, leaves a divorce paper, and walks out. Boss energy activated. I was stunned, senseless on the spot. When Pei Jing's eyes filled with concern, tenderly calling the woman who destroyed my hard work Qing, only then did I suddenly realize, as a strange memory flooded into my mind, harshly awakening me from this illusion. I'd been living for 3 years. The pastries shattered and scattered on the ground, covered in dirt and dust, mercilessly ground under the embroidered shoes of that woman called Chinj. She rolled her eyes at me with displeasure. "You women are so unreasonable. You delayed this young lady's efforts to catch the thief, and I didn't come after you for it. Yet you are trying to extort money from me. Even if your family is poor, can't you have some shame?" I finally released the wood fragments crushed in my palm. Me head was thundering. Mu Chinj, the female lead of this wuxia novel titled Sword's Cry Across the 9 Provinces. Mu Chinj roamed the Jianggu freely, sharing mutual understanding with the martial arts alliance leader Xiao Jingchuan, while behind her always stood a hidden big shot willing to die for her and silently devote himself. The young master of Cloud Moon Manor, the devoted second male lead. At the end of this story, to completely dispel the male lead's jealousy and allow Mu Chinj to be happy without psychological burden, second male lead lied that he had long grown tired of Jianggu and casually married some blind common woman from the streets, just to tell Mu Chinj, "I already have a family. For the rest of my life I only wish for your well-being, and I, Jiang Wanning, am precisely that tool bitch in the plot whose name the author barely mentioned a few times, whose purpose is to serve as a shield for the devoted second male lead." That slap from Peiji Zhang shattered all my rose-tinted filters about him. I could no longer connect this man before me with cold, stern eyes to the husband who would gently warm my hands under the lamplight on ordinary days. As long as he encountered the Mu Chinj system, he would no longer be my husband, but rather that sharp blade forever guarding behind the female lead. If anyone else so much as touched a corner of the female lead's clothing, he could cripple them without batting an eye. Just now, in order to chase after someone, Mu Chinj used my small stall as a stepping board to propel herself forward, and that flying thief, completely unharmed, had long since used his lightness kung fu to escape. Mu Chinj stamped her feet in frustration, her face showing disgust. Jingchuan and I made a bet. Whoever catches that flying thief first gets that meteor dagger. Now it has all been ruined by this shrew. As she spoke, she lifted her foot with distaste. The crushed hibiscus cake mud on the ground had stuck to the bottom of her incomparably precious cloud brocade embroidered shoes. She always loved cleanliness the most. She immediately frowned and urged Peiji Jing, "Jing, these shoes are dirty. Quickly go to Tianxiang Pavilion and buy me a new pair to get rid of this bad luck." Peiji Jing nodded repeatedly. Before leaving, he didn't forget to admonish me coldly and sternly from his high position. "Wanning, I remember you are not usually such a petty and mercenary woman. How could you make such unreasonable trouble and delay others' important business over such trivial gains? Go back immediately, and don't come out to embarrass yourself again in the future." I opened my dry lips, still wanting to explain for myself that is half a month's worth of our food money. But I saw he had no intention whatsoever of listening to me speak further. His robe fluttering, he no longer concealed himself as he deployed his top-tier lightness skill, sweeping toward the most expensive Tianxiang Pavilion shoe shop in the capital, all just to buy Mu Chinj a new pair of shoes. That pair of cloud brocade embroidered shoes cost as much as half a year's worth of food, clothing, and expenses for us as a couple. I finally understood that his flowing, masterful martial arts had never been used even half a bit to help me carry heavy things. I no longer stood in place. Silently withdrew my gaze from the direction he left. That heart chamber that once beat fervently for him grew cold inch by inch. It seemed a decision had been made. Then I brushed the dust off my skirt and walked toward home in the opposite direction without looking back, just as I pushed open that mottled wooden door and returned home. Auntie Wang from next door came looking for me excitedly, holding a shoe pattern. "Wanning girl, here. This is the thick, soled shoe pattern you asked me to find the other day. I finally found it for you." It was Peiji Jing's foot size, because I saw his worn cloth shoes. I had asked Auntie for the shoe pattern earlier. I had originally planned to save up a few copper coins from selling pastries, while working from dawn to dusk, to buy a bolt of durable satin in hand, sew him a new pair of shoes. Now I had the shoe pattern, but this man, I am done serving him. I reached out and pushed the shoe pattern back, apologizing with a calm expression. "Auntie, thank you for your trouble, but please take it back. I don't need it anymore." Auntie knew I'd been working non-stop these past few days just for this surprise. Now seeing my swollen red cheeks and dispirited appearance, she vaguely guessed what happened. "Oh my, what happened to your face? What kind of grudge can a married couple hold overnight? Jijing usually seems so gentle and good-tempered. You two must have some misunderstanding. Just close the door and talk it out." Her continuous words of consolation only made my heart plummet all the way down to a bottomless ice cellar. Jijing and I don't have any misunderstanding. He deeply loves the female lead, a love that is both restrained and passionate. And I am just a background character in this book. He and I live frugally in a leaky little courtyard. Even this identity as a poor scholar is fake. Jijing's true identity is the head disciple and young master of Cloud Moon Manor, controlling vast wealth born into luxury and privilege. Those coarse grain cakes I stayed up all night making, to someone like him who is accustomed to delicacies, must taste like chewing wax, hard to swallow. I've finally cracked the case of why he always said the bookshop provided meals, and he'd eaten out before coming home. At first, I felt sorry for him, always thinking he was worried about our rice jar running empty, so he sacrificed himself by eating less, leaving it for me to fill my stomach. Turns out, I was overthinking. He and I were never the same kind of people to begin with. On that martial arts world path beneath his feet, there has only ever been the figure of Mu Qing alone. While I am just a supporting character borrowed to be a cover, it is time for me to go my own way too. I pulled out a bundle and neatly folded my few pieces of clothing, washed until faded, and stuffed them inside. Just as I was about to get up to grab some travel money, I heard the wooden gate outside the courtyard creak open. It was Jijing coming back. Along with his steady footsteps came Mu Qing's clear, yet coquettishly arrogant laughter. Qing said carelessly, "Your qinggong hasn't gotten rusty, and you picked good shoes too. But that thief got away. So I can't win Jingchuan's meteor daggers now. That is your fault. How are you gonna make it up to me?" Jijing's voice was so gentle it seemed like water could drip from it, an indulgence he never showed when facing me. "Naturally, I'll send word back and have the manor deliver those 10 jars of 100-year old falling plum intoxication to your residence. How is that? I hear that wine from your manor, one jar alone is worth 1,000 gold, priceless even. You are being so generous with me. Don't tell me you still can't forget your old feelings for this young lady." Mu Qing teased with a mix of probing and pride. The voices outside the door were separated from me by only a wall. Jijing's breathing clearly stopped for a moment. Then he denied it extremely naturally and instinctively. "Don't talk nonsense. I am already married." I heard it clearly. In the 3 years since he married me, afraid I'd learn of his Zhonggu grudges and feuds, he told me he was a destitute scholar without the strength to truss a chicken. Every time I saw him come back with those copper coins that were barely enough to get by, guilt still in his eyes, my heart would ache, and I'd push all the good dishes into his bowl. But it was all an act. He married me only to establish a married man persona for himself, so that Mu Qing could enjoy his devotion as the second male lead with a clear conscience. He even thought that if one day Mu Qing changed her mind, he could discard this commoner identity at any time and marry her openly using his true identity as young manor lord. "What is the point?" I said to myself coldly in my heart. Since I already know about his scheming calculations, then not one more tear of mine should be shed for this scumbag. Only at my chest, the original owner's instinctive throbbing pain still lingered. After all, 3 years of genuine devotion I fed him. Even a dog should have warmed up by now. Outside the courtyard, Mu Qing suddenly gave a coquettish smile and mocked. "I know you are married, but that shrew haggling over every penny at the market today really doesn't deserve someone as noble and graceful as you. You've been wronged." I couldn't see Jijing's expression. I only heard his flat voice come through, neither sad nor happy. "She was made to lose face by you today, so she must be fuming right now. To avoid her making a scene at this hour, I won't take you inside." Between the lines, it was all disdain, without half a bit of concern for how I felt about getting slapped. Mu Qing said with amusement, "Don't tell me you still need to humble yourself and coax her. You are the young master of Yunye Manor. How did you become so timid and pathetic in front of common folk?" Jijing accepted her teasing, chuckled softly, and said casually, "Let her be. This kind of woman loves nothing more than to be jealous and petty. Once she has vented enough and realizes she has nowhere to go, she'll calm down on her own." But he didn't know. I wasn't being jealous and petty. nor was I throwing a tantrum waiting for him to coax me. I was simply cutting him out of my life completely. Mu Qing's visit to see him this time wasn't just to catch up on old times. There was also an important matter she needed him to handle. Half a month later, Mingjian Manor would hold a martial arts conference, and the victor could obtain that top-level secret manual that countless people in the Jianggu were desperately pursuing. The Jueying Sword Manual. The martial arts world was engaged in open and covert struggles over this manual, with bloodshed flowing like rivers, despite this being an extremely dangerous whirlpool. When Pei Jing heard Mu Qing's request, he agreed without hesitation. Qing's matters are my matters, Pei Jing's matters, through fire and water. I will not refuse. Having received a satisfactory answer, Mu Qing added with concern, this matter mustn't let Jingchuan know. As the leader of the Righteous Alliance, if he were to fight for it, it would inevitably give others ammunition against him. You must keep this secret for me and seize it in secret. All right, rest assured. Pei Jing agreed readily and decisively. After seeing Mu Qing off, he pushed open the door and skillfully began searching for the luggage he needed for his trip. While rummaging through boxes and cabinets, he suddenly noticed me sitting in the corner of the room. When did you get back? He was clearly maintaining his scholarly persona at this moment, his tone stiff, not even glancing at my swollen cheek. He ignored him and went about filling a bamboo water bag with well water for myself to drink on the road. Seeing that I didn't respond, he finally lifted his eyes slightly. You just heard that I am going out to take an accounting job. As he spoke, he quite naturally took the water bag I had just filled and put it into his own bundle. His movements were smooth and fluid without a trace of guilt or discomfort, as if everything I busied myself with was naturally meant to serve him. I didn't argue with him, nor did I question him like a resentful wife, asking why he had deceived me these 3 years, why he had slapped me away, because I had already obtained the script and knew the final answer. Even more so because he and I were now people from 2 different worlds, with nothing left to discuss. Cursing him one more time would only waste my breath and needlessly add some health, damaging anger to myself. I just quietly looked at him with the gaze one would give a stranger. He felt a bit creeped out by my stare, and a trace of irritation flashed in his eyes. If you are still mad about what happened at the market, I'll give you an extra tael of silver as compensation when I get back. Stop giving me that face. He was leaving perfect. I was leaving too. I took a deep breath and finally spoke up. Pei Jing, I want a div. Before the word divorce could leave my mouth. He seemed convinced I was just making a fuss again, grabbed his bundle and strode right out the door, without even the patience to hear me finish half a sentence, only leaving behind a cold. I am in a hurry to leave the city. You better behave yourself. In the past, every day when he left, even when pretending to go to the bookshop, he would gently say to me, Wife, wait for me at home. Your husband will return early. But this time, in order to rush to the female lead's appointment, he left in extreme haste. I am just a weak woman with no martial arts skills. Naturally, I couldn't keep up with his pace as he secretly used his qinggong. In the end, I didn't even get to make him hear a complete divorce face to face. Looking at the empty courtyard, I bit my lip. The corners of my eyes couldn't help but be forced out 2 physiological tears by the original owner's lingering emotions. It wasn't that I couldn't bear to part with him, but rather I felt it wasn't worth it for the 3 years this body had given, day and night. I steadied myself, wiped the corners of my eyes, walked to the desk, and took out the paper and brush he usually used to practice calligraphy at home. After grinding the ink, I lifted the brush and wrote an extremely straightforward divorce letter. The gist was, our fate has ended. We part ways amicably. You marry as you wish, and I'll do the same. Neither concerning the other. After finishing, I spread it out neatly and pressed it down with a paperweight on the book he most often read. During these 3 years together, each time he returned from a long journey, he would buy a small packet of the cheapest candied fruit from the street corner to maintain his persona. Watching me treasure and eat them one by one, he would smile with his eyes, wanting, is it sweet? In places where Mu Qing didn't appear, he could still spare me a pitiful bit of attention. But once Mu Qing appeared, I would completely evaporate from his sight, becoming an unwelcome speck of dust in his eyes. This candied fruit worth mere coins once deceived me for countless days and nights. From now on, he no longer needs to bring it. I shouldered my coarse cloth bag and locked the courtyard gate without any reluctance, Walking on the street, I indirectly inquired with the passing merchants, and found out that this so-called martial arts gathering at the famous Sword Manor was being held in Luodu to the east. I breathed a sigh of relief. I deliberately bought an old horse, hitched it to an old cart, and headed steadily towards the furthest west. Knowing I had entered into a book, I recalled that the book had briefly mentioned that in the far western lands there was a place called Carefree Corner. That place doesn't concern itself with martial world affairs. The people are simple and honest, and all travelers are friendly with each other. It is an excellent place to escape the world and retire. After walking for less than 2 days, the weather turned against us, and the sky suddenly darkened. A thunderbolt struck down, and in an instant torrential rain began pouring. In the desolate wilderness, a fragile paper umbrella wasn't nearly enough to shield us. I hurriedly led the old horse and took shelter in a dilapidated mountain god temple. But I didn't expect that shortly after entering the temple, before I could even start a fire, the urgent sound of clashing swords suddenly came from the curtain of rain. On the muddy road ahead, a black figure stumbled and staggered in. At the same time, I smelled an intensely pungent stench of blood. As a transmigrator from a law-abiding society, this bloody scent made me want to retch, just as I was about to lean against the moldy pillar to dry heave. A large hand covered in slippery fresh blood and ice, cold like an iron clamp, suddenly clamped over my mouth from behind. "If you want to live, shut your mouth." An extremely low male voice, carrying a hint of casualness and ruthlessness, sounded by my ear. The bloody scent on his palm made me realize he was severely injured. I was so frightened, my heart pounded wildly. In the few days since transmigrating, I've come to deeply understand this is a martial arts world where human lives are worth less than grass. Getting involved in Jongu vendettas, I wouldn't have enough lives even if I had 100. I didn't dare turn around to look at that person's face, bit my lip tight, and nodded my head frantically like pounding garlic. But that person didn't relax one bit. It wasn't until the group of pursuers outside the temple had chased far away following the misleading blood trail that an extremely soft, long sigh of relief came from behind me. My nerves were still stretched taut as ever. That boss, I opened my mouth with a trembling voice. "What did you call me?" The person behind me sucked in a sharp breath from the pain. "Go, cut the crap. Go to the back of the temple and find me some purple pearl grass that can stop bleeding." I agreed repeatedly. My arms trembled lightly, but my feet moved extremely fast, even though the heavy rain outside hadn't stopped. I just wanted to escape from this dangerous person. Who knew? I had just run dozens of steps out of the ruined temple in the rain. That severely injured man in black from before moved in front of me in an instant like a ghost, blocking my path with a long blade raised, its back a dark, somber color. "Little girl looking so frantic and running blindly like this. Are you planning to run and report to the authorities, or go inform on me?" A wicked and playful smile rose on the man's pale face. I tugged at the corners of my stiff lips. By the light of the lightning, I discovered his features were actually extremely handsome. Sharp brows and bright eyes, the corners of his eyes slightly upturned, carrying an indescribable wild arrogance. Barely past 20, clearly severely injured, yet the murderous intent on his blade made one feel like falling into an icy abyss. "You jest, great hero. We met by chance. If those people from earlier found out I saved you, wouldn't I be bringing trouble upon myself? I am just a common citizen. Why would I risk my life for a complete stranger?" I boldly retorted. The man seemed to have heard some kind of joke, lightly clapped his palm, then lifted my bundle that I'd left in the temple with one hand. "Why, because your life, along with all your belongings, are now in my hands." I secretly ground my teeth. This was clearly a bandit leader who'd rob you even after running into a runaway bride. This heavy rain won't stop anytime soon, and my enemies might still be circling around nearby. Why must you insist on traveling right now? Might as well obediently go back and rest for a bit. The man's words carried a naked threat. Seeing that the situation was stronger than I was, I had no choice but to give up and obediently go to the back courtyard to find herbs for him. By the time I returned after washing the herbs clean with rainwater, I saw that he had already brazenly unwrapped my bundle and was holding the last few pieces of hibiscus cake I'd brought out, eating them in large bites. "How could you just take things without asking?" Though angry, I didn't dare raise my voice because of the blade in his hand. I didn't touch your other tattered clothes. He swallowed the pastry, raised an eyebrow with a smile. I just found the fragrance of your pastries enticing, and couldn't resist such worldly desires for a moment. Looking at those hibiscus cakes, my eyes dimmed. These were the few pieces that had been left in the kitchen that morning when the incident happened, spared from disaster. In Peiji Jing's eyes, these things I made from dawn to dusk were nothing more than crude, unpalatable food to fill one's stomach, and in the end they even dirtied the female lead's shoes. I was stunned for a moment, suddenly losing the strength to argue with him, and silently walked over to the fire. Seeing me lost in thought and distracted, the man keenly sensed my low spirits. He surprisingly stopped what he was doing for once, carefully wrapped up the remaining 2 pieces of cake, and put them back in my bundle. All right, don't look like the sky is falling. Since I ate your cake, I Yan Wudu acknowledged this debt to you. He wiped the cake crumbs from the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand that wasn't stained with blood, and looked me up and down. A girl like you with no internal energy and soft hands, wandering the Jianggu all alone. Sooner or later you'll be gnawed down to nothing but bones. He seemed to think for a moment, pulling out the blade at his waist to toy with it. If you have an enemy who wronged you and is hunting you down, for the sake of this cake, I can reluctantly help you out and take care of him with 1 slash. Listening to his casual tone, I lowered my eyes and shook my head. There is no enemy hunting me down. There is. It is just that I don't want to have even the slightest connection with those self-righteous male and female leads for the rest of my life. I just want to go to some quiet place safely and live my ordinary days as a normal person. No worries, if you can't think of it right now, you can take your time thinking. Yan Wudu leaned against the mottled wall pillar, his face mostly hidden in shadow, yet his words and actions were extremely casual and arrogant. After pondering for a while, I spoke up. Can you teach me some martial arts for self-defense? Learning some survival and escape skills so if I really run into bandits in the future, I can escape on my own. He lazily glanced at me, his brows and eyes obscured by the fallen strands of hair, that long blade emanating coldness hanging at his waist, the spitting image of an unruly and rebellious swordsman. You want to take me as your master? He lifted his chin and snorted with laughter. Just with those few leftover lotus cakes of yours? You want me to go through all that trouble? Might as well let me just go kill your enemies for you directly. That'd be more satisfying. Human lives in his eyes were light and insignificant as feathers. After thinking it over, I couldn't help but remind him, there are people beyond people. Heavens beyond heavens. Have you heard of the soul-severing blade? He raised his eyebrows, looking at me with an ambiguous smile. With the confidence of knowing the plot, I laughed at him. You don't even know the famous soul-severing blade, and you call yourself a blade wielder. Rumor has it that the 100 Flowers sect sent dozens of top-ranked assassins from the assassin rankings to hunt him down. Guess what happened? They all returned in defeat. The blade techniques of the soul-severing blade are both righteous and evil, utterly unfathomable. The soul-severing blade was the ultimate villain in the book, who created tremendous obstacles for the male and female leads along his path of revenge. Although I wanted to avoid the protagonist group, I also knew well the dangers of the martial world. After hearing this, Yan Wudu unexpectedly laughed softly for the first time, his chest vibrating. After my repeated requests, he finally agreed to teach me a few life-saving techniques in Qigong and escape arts, but on the condition that I'd be responsible for his meals on the road. I agreed immediately. After spending several days together, he truly instructed me carefully on acupoints and footwork, and I gradually let down my guard against him. After entering a village, he took out a small silver ingot and exchanged it for an unremarkable horse carriage. Night fell quickly. We agreed to take turns driving the carriage. When it was his turn in the latter half of the night, I was originally forcing myself to stay awake in the carriage, but somehow fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, the carriage had stopped in front of an inn in a bustling small town. Drove all night. I'll go feed the horse, you go upstairs and book 2 guest rooms. I had just walked into the inn's main hall when I instantly sensed something was off. Most people in the inn were either carrying sabers or wearing swords, and even from several steps away, I could feel the oppressive aura of killing intent emanating from them. I couldn't help but feel a chill down my spine, until I heard a familiar and gentle voice coming from the private seating area on the 2nd floor. My heart shook, and I glanced upstairs. When I got a clear look at that group's attire, I hurriedly turned aside and hid behind a pillar. It was Peiji Jing. At this moment he had changed out of that shabby faded robe and was wearing a cloud-water blue brocade gown, with high-quality mutton, fat jade ornaments, and a treasured sword at his waist, followed by 3 or 4 attendants. Full of vigor and spirit, he was clearly the glorious young master of Yunya Manor, compared to his usual persona as a scholar husband clinging to his poor man's pride. The difference was like heaven and earth. His peripheral vision swept over the direction of the pillar where I was standing, and his brows furrowed slightly. Mu Qingzhe beside him noticed his sudden distraction and reached out to wave at him with a grin. "What is wrong? Why are you suddenly spacing out?" Peiji Jing's expression froze for a moment, and he looked at the main hall again, but didn't notice anything unusual. Nothing, just felt that figure just now looked somewhat familiar. It seemed he hadn't recognized me. My heart sank, and I couldn't help asking the inn's waiter, only to learn that this wasn't the road to Weiyu Corner at all, but the direction to the Luodu Martial Arts Assembly. Yan Wudu actually turned around. I turned around about to go back to the carriage to get my luggage and leave, but I was stopped by Yan Wudu, who had just returned from feeding the horses. "You are leaving. If you leave, this exclusive footwork technique I just started teaching will be lost forever." "It is fine. I was only learning the basics anyway." I lowered my head, avoiding his gaze. "Different paths mean we shouldn't work together." Yan Wudu sighed. "If you miss out on me as your master, there is no second one like me in this world." "What? Did you run into some old acquaintance and got scared like a startled bird?" "Number," I denied it flatly, but his sharp peach, blossom eyes saw right through me. He didn't call me out on it, though, just pulled out a veiled hat with white gauze from his chest and placed it on my head. "Wear this to cover your face. Didn't you want to learn life-saving moves? When you encounter obstacles, running away isn't the only solution." His words had deeper meaning. I gripped the edge of the veil and suddenly raised my head, looking at him through the gauze. "Fine, I won't leave for now." He was right. Peiji Jing was the one who deceived me and hit me. I wasn't the one in the wrong. Why should I be the one taking detours and living like a rat crossing the street? What surprised me was that Yan Wudu also swaggered right into the inn and deliberately took a seat not far from Peiji Jing's table. Peiji Jing looked at him warily, the tension between masters instantly surging like hidden currents. Yan Wudu saw me approaching while wearing a veiled hat and immediately waved, calling me over with a voice so loud he was afraid others couldn't hear. "Disciple, come here quickly." I glared at him through the veil. There was no formal apprenticeship ceremony between us, yet he had the nerve to keep taking advantage of me by calling me that. This friend has been staring at my disciple the whole time. Isn't that a bit too presumptuous? Yan Wudu turned his head to provoke Peiji Jing. Peiji Jing's slightly furrowed brows finally relaxed, as if he had come to terms with something. "My apologies. The young lady's figure seems somewhat similar to someone I know, an old acquaintance." Peiji Jing asked tentatively. "May I ask why the young lady is wearing a veil and not showing her true face?" Through a layer of thin gauze, I looked directly at this man who was still nominally my husband. "May I ask who this person you mention is? What is your relationship?" Recalling 3 years of waiting in vain, my voice gradually turned cold as I mocked him with veiled barbs. "I see you already have a beautiful companion by your side, yet you mention an old acquaintance in your heart to another woman. Forgive my bluntness, but being fickle in affection is not the conduct of a gentleman." This is where the story gets so incredibly satisfying. Wanning hits the road and accidentally runs into Yan Wudu, the ultimate, terrifying villain of the martial arts world. He is heavily injured, arrogant, and dangerous. But unlike her ex-husband, Yan Wudu actually respects her boundaries. When he eats her cakes, he acknowledges the debt and teaches her martial arts to protect herself. Days later, they stop at an inn, and who is sitting there in luxury silk robes? Her ex-husband, Peiji Jing, and his precious Mu Qingzhe. Wanning puts on a veiled hat to hide her face. Peiji Jing looks at her and says she reminds him of an old acquaintance. He expects her to be flattered. Instead, Wanning delivers an absolute verbal fatality. Through the veil, she calls him out in front of the entire inn. She basically says, "You're sitting here with a beautiful woman, but you're trying to flirt with a stranger by bringing up some old acquaintance. You are a fickle, hypocritical trash can." Peiji Jing's ego completely shatters. He has spent his whole life pretending to be a noble, devoted gentleman, and she just publicly exposed him as a fraud. He tries to save face by saying his wife was just an insignificant woman. But the best part, when he finally attacks her to rip off her veil. Wanning uses the martial arts Yan Wudu taught her to parry his strike and knock him back. When he sees her face, he begs her to come back, and she looks him dead in the eye and says, "You are not blind, but your heart is. Go protect your beloved." It is the ultimate thank you next moment. As my words fell, Pei Jing's usually composed face instantly stiffened. He had never been subjected to such direct, cold mockery. The evening breeze blew Mu Qing's red garment into his line of sight. Pei Jing paused for a moment, withdrew his gaze, and resumed that detached demeanor of his, like a clear breeze and bright moon. "I've made a fool of myself in front of you, miss. That person is just an insignificant woman. No need to mention her." Mu Qing, wanting to avoid idle bystanders, urged Pei Jing to head up to a private room upstairs. The main hall became quiet. I removed my veil to get some air, only to see Yan Wudu sitting across from me, propping his chin with one hand, staring at me with profound eyes. "If you are hurt from your ex-husband's betrayal and want to cry, go ahead and cry. I won't laugh at you," he suddenly spoke. I paused in my movement. "How did you know? I have eyes, and I can listen too." He smiled knowingly, pointing upstairs. "That kid's eyes when he looked at you were full of guilt." I smiled at him calmly. "That matter was already over before I met you. If you think I'd sob my heart out over his insignificant remark, then you are really underestimating me. Once I decide to leave, I never look back." After hearing this, Yan Wudu's eyes lit up, and he suddenly burst into hearty laughter. "Good. Well said. Never look back. Worthy of being the disciple that I, Yan Wudu, have taken a liking to. Such carefree decisiveness is just to my taste." I gave him a sidelong glance. "Who is your disciple? We're just using each other. Since you insist on wading into the muddy waters of this martial arts assembly, let me warn you, that Vanishing Shadow Sword Manual is a blood-soaked dead end. Even if you get it, you won't live to use it." He had a foxtail grass dangling from his mouth, plucked from who knows where. His peach blossom eyes half squinted as he looked at me. "When you are alive, there are always some situations you must resolve. Don't worry, once I've done what I need to do, I'll naturally see you safely to that worry-free corner place." After lingering in this small town for 2 days, people from all sides gathered in increasing numbers. In the inn's main hall, Pei Jing sent his attendants daily to buy pastries made by the local most famous pastry chef. At this moment, his face showed signs of fatigue as he tossed the delicate pastry, from which he'd only taken one bite, back onto the plate. "This taste isn't right." Pei Jing rubbed his temples, his expression irritable. Mu Qing noticed his unusual state and asked with concern, "What is wrong, Jing? Have you exhausted yourself these past few days gathering information for me? Once we get the sword manual, I'll accompany you back to Cloud Moon Manor to rest properly." But Pei Jing shook his head. "No need, I want to return to the capital sooner." Just then, Yan Wudu swaggered over, pulled out 2 pieces of lotus cake wrapped tightly in oil paper from his chest, and casually bit into one. The young manor master's taste really is picky, refusing to eat pastries that cost 2 taels of silver per plate, sitting here sighing and moaning. A sweet fragrance of mixed grains wafted through the air. Pei Jing suddenly raised his head, his gaze locked intently on the lotus cake in Yan Wudu's hand. This rough method, this unique osmanthus sugar fragrance. "Where did you get this pastry from?" Pei Jing straightened up, his breathing becoming a bit hurried. Yan Wudu said with a cheeky grin, "What, think I stole it? This was made by my disciple's own hands, tastes 100 times better than any master chef." Pei Jing rarely ate the food I made in the past. Though he didn't say it, I knew he looked down on the lowly air of eating chaff and swallowing vegetables. But at this moment, his eyes actually turned red, staring at the remaining half-piece of pastry. "Could you sell me this pastry?" Yan Wudu protectively stepped back. "Not for sale. This pastry contains my disciple's heartfelt intentions. Wouldn't trade it for a fortune." Uncontrollable emotions surged in Pei Jing's eyes, and disregarding the dignity of the young manor lord, he suddenly reached out to snatch it. Yan Wudu's figure flashed, avoiding him, and deliberately shouted loudly to the surroundings. Everyone come look. The dignified young manor lord of Yunya Manor is actually robbing someone's dry rations. Martial arts practitioners around them turned to look and gossip, but Peiji Jing turned a deaf ear. He clenched his fists tightly, then suddenly turned his head to look at me standing not far away wearing a veiled hat. Peiji Jing walked up to me in a few steps, his presence extremely oppressive, carrying a trace of unyielding stubbornness. "Miss, could you remove your veil?" I laughed coldly. "Such an abrupt request. Am I your servant, to come and go at your beck and call? You and my wife are extremely alike." His voice trembled a bit. I sneered out loud. "Oh, that unimportant wife, since you said she doesn't matter. Why bother pestering me?" Peiji Jing had always been proud and arrogant. Being repeatedly stung by his own words, he didn't know how to respond for a moment, but the unease in his heart grew stronger. He suddenly reached out, his sword sheath instantly flicking toward my veil. "Pardon my offense." He had calculated that I had no martial arts skills and couldn't possibly dodge this move. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. These past few days following Yan Wudu, I hadn't mastered much else, but I'd practiced this set of footwork that combined skillful techniques extremely well. Plus, knowing the plot, I'd been guarding against this move of his all along. My body suddenly leaned back, my footsteps staggered, and borrowing the force from his sword sheath, I struck his wrist with a kun-jin that Yan Wudu had taught me. Peiji Jing was completely unprepared for me to know martial arts. His wrist went numb, and he stumbled back 2 steps, looking at me in disbelief. And my veil also fell to the ground with the wind. My face appeared before him completely unveiled. Wanning? Peiji Jing's eyes widened. That usual composure of having everything under control was now shattered to pieces. "How can you be here? When did you learn martial arts?" I raised my head, meeting his eyes full of shock, and sneered with curled lips. "You've got the wrong person." "How could I have the wrong person? That taste of the hibiscus cake, the way you speak. Am I blind?" Peiji Jing stepped forward, his eyes reddening. I didn't back down, saying word by word, "You are not blind, but your heart is, young manor master. You and I have nothing to do with each other. Go protect your beloved." Peiji Jing still wanted to reach out and grab me, when suddenly a signal came from the distance, and an attendant came running with a horse. Mu Qing said urgently, "Ji Jing, let's go quickly. There is news about the sword manual from Jingchuan's side." Who knew that Peiji Jing would push away the attendant's hand, as if he had completely recognized something in this instant? He suddenly seized a fast horse and mounted it. "Sorry, Qing, I can't help you seize the sword manual." Peiji Jing was unprecedentedly resolute, not even glancing at her. "I am going back to the capital. Are you crazy? You've never broken a promise to me." Mu Qing stamped her feet anxiously. Peiji Jing stared at me intently, raised his horsewhip high, and rode away in a cloud of dust. In the wind, his panicked murmuring could faintly be heard. "I need to go home. I need to see if she is still there." Peiji Jing's perspective, Shi Changxing, or rather Peiji Jing, rode his horse frantically back to the capital without sleep or rest. He finally realized that his eyes had, unknowingly, shifted from Mu Qing's back to the wife, who left a lone lamp burning for him every day. He had long grown accustomed to her docility, accustomed to her tolerance. Passing through the west side of the city, he deliberately dismounted and bought a few packs of her favorite cheap candied fruit, so sweet it was cloying. He used to disdain these common street snacks, but now he protected them in his chest like treasures, wholeheartedly believing that as long as he handed her the candied fruit like usual and asked, "Wanning, is it sweet?" she would smile with crinkled eyes and forgive all his temper. But when he stumbled and pushed open his own courtyard gate, he found fallen leaves piled thick on the ground. The door was unlocked. Pushing it open, he saw cold pots and a cold stove, not a trace of the warmth of cooking. In the corner, he saw the cloth shoes with worn-through holes that he'd worn to pretend poverty, and beside those shoes, the plain embroidered shoes that were always busy going here and there were gone. The auntie next door heard the commotion and poked her head out. "Oh my, Scholar Pei, you are finally back. Did Wanning go visit relatives? Haven't seen her for quite a few days." Before, she got up early and stayed up late selling pastries to save money to buy you satin for new shoes. Her hands got blistered from the burns, you know. Peiji Jing was thunderstruck, his whole body rigid. In his mind flashed the scene at the market, the shock and despair in her eyes when he slapped her without letting her explain. She was trying to make me a new pair of shoes. He walked tremblingly to the desk. There, under the paperweight, lay a sheet of flat rice paper with delicate handwriting. A divorce letter. No, it was a mutual separation agreement. He never knew that his wife, who was not presentable enough, could write so beautifully. Until the moon rose to its zenith, filling the room with clear light, Pei Zhijing slumped on the floor. Under the cabinet beside him, he found that piece of incomplete pastry from half a month ago, the one he had disdained and carelessly thrown away, now gnawed by mice. He stuffed the dust, covered pastry into his mouth, and tears burst forth without warning. He finally understood that the Zhang Wanning, who could be placated with a bag of candied fruit worth just a few coins, would never come back. In the small town where the martial arts gathering was held, flames suddenly shot up into the night sky. A brocade box said to contain the Jueying sword manual appeared in the world, causing fighters from all sides to clash violently at the edge of that 10,000 ren cliff outside town. The inn caught fire. In my panic, I rushed out the door but couldn't find Yan Wudu anywhere. He clearly said he would have a bowl of longevity noodles with me tonight as my graduation feast, and tomorrow he'd escort me to Wuyu Corner. Following the crowd's discussions, I finally learned that the fighting had spread to the top of Duanhun Cliff. When I desperately rode my horse to the cliff's edge, I saw sword marks crisscrossing all around the cliff wall, broken weapons scattered on the ground. The battle had been devastatingly brutal. Yan Wudu stood tottering at the edge of the cliff, his black robes torn open in several places by palm strikes, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Clearly he had exhausted his internal energy and was at the end of his rope. And standing opposite him, holding a long sword pointed at him, was none other than the male lead from the book, Xiao Jingchuan. Hand over the sword manual. Yan Wudu, you shouldn't exist in this world to bring calamity upon the people. Xiao Jingchuan's expression was cold and stern. He too was seriously injured. Forcibly mustering his last breath of true qi, Yan Wudu curved his lips in a mocking smile, his eyes wild and unrestrained. You want it? Come and take it with your own skills. Just as the two prepared for their final death match, something unexpected happened. Mu Qingge, who had been hiding in the shadows all along, suddenly leaped out, taking advantage of the moment when Yan Wudu was guarding against Xiao Jingchuan. She thrust her sword toward Yan Wudu's back. Jingchuan, I'll help you eliminate this menace. Yan Wudu, dodge. My eyes turned red as I screamed myself hoarse, rushing toward him recklessly. Yan Wudu jerked his head around sharply. The instant he saw me appear, a trace of extreme panic flashed through his usually composed eyes. Hearing my voice, Mu Qingge's sword edge shifted off course by an inch, to avoid the backlash of this sinister sword qi hitting me. Yan Wudu suddenly turned around and took the blow with the back of his blade, but his already exhausted body could no longer maintain its balance, and he toppled toward the edge of the cliff over the bottomless abyss. The night wind howled. In the instant he fell, his gaze locked deeply onto me, running forward. He finally let down all his defenses and arrogance, silently mouthing to me with the lightest movement, "Go live your ordinary life, Wanning." To avoid dragging me down, he even gave up the slightest instinct to struggle for survival, letting the abyss swallow him. No, I don't know where I got the speed and strength from. Perhaps it was the life-saving movement techniques he'd taught me these past few days, pushed to their absolute limit. In the instant before Yan Wudu's hem was about to disappear over the cliff's edge, I lunged toward the edge in an extremely disheveled yet desperate manner, my hands clutching his wrist with a death grip. The downward pull instantly dragged half my body over the cliff. The rough stones scraped my arms raw, leaving behind glaring streaks of red. Yan Wudu raised his head in midair, stunned. For the first time, that face covered in blood showed furious shock. "Zhang Wanning, are you insane? Let go, you'll fall." I bit down so hard my teeth nearly shattered, tears falling in large drops onto his cheeks. "Don't even think about it. You still owe me the gratitude of that bowl of farewell noodles. Until you finish eating it, even if you are a big villain, don't you dare die alone in some cold, dark place. Ladies, if you love a bad boy who is soft only for her, this ending will make you swoon." The story climaxes at a terrifying cliffside battle. Yan Wudu, the so-called villain, is fighting the male lead. The female lead, Mu Qingge, tries to sneak attack Yan Wudu from behind. Wanning screams his name and runs toward him. To protect Wanning from the dangerous sword energy, Yan Wudu turns around, takes the hit, and falls backward off the cliff. As he is falling, he looks at her and mouths, "Go live your ordinary life, Wanning." He is willing to die alone in the dark just to keep her safe. But Wanning refuses to be a bystander anymore. She dives toward the edge of the cliff, scraping her arms raw, and grabs his wrist in a death grip. Half her body is hanging over the abyss. He yells at her to let go so she doesn't fall, and she screams through her tears. "You owe me a bowl of noodles. I don't care if you're the villain, you don't get to die alone." She pulls him up. She chooses the villain over the heroes. Why? Because the so-called heroes treated her like garbage. The noble second male lead slapped her and used her. The righteous female lead crushed her livelihood and sneak, attacked a man from behind. But the villain, he ate her cakes, taught her how to survive, and was willing to fall into an abyss to protect her. They move to a peaceful town, open a pastry stall, and live happily ever after. He isn't a villain anymore. He is just a man helping his wife bake cakes, putting flour on his nose, and asking her if the pastries are sweet. Just then, Xiao Jingtuan stepped forward to stop Mu Qing, who was about to strike again with her sword, his brows tightly furrowed. "Qing, that is enough. The sword manual is fake. This is an empty box." He never cared about ruling the world at all. He just wanted to use this to lure me out for a duel. Let them go. The righteous sect members withdrew. I used every ounce of strength I had in my life to pull that once. Arrogant man whose heart had long turned to ashes, bit by bit back from the edge of hell. 3 months later, the far western lands, Wuyu Corner exactly as the rumors described. This place had green mountains at its back, faced a clear lake, and the neighbors got along harmoniously. A paradise far removed from the troubles of the martial world. When we first arrived, the townspeople heard that we young couple planned to settle down permanently and enthusiastically helped me find a small courtyard with a garden. I also set up a snack stall at a street corner in the market, selling hibiscus cakes and sweet soups every day. Today the sunlight is exceptionally good. I am kneading dough, and beside me sits a tall, handsome man who, with those steady hands that once gripped the soul-severing blade, is skillfully helping me oil the cake molds without any awkwardness. After I rescued him from the cliff that day, Yan Wudu lay bedridden for a full half-month. I kept watch at his bedside, never leaving his side. After my wound healed, I never brought up his bloody and violent past again. I only asked him, "Are you leaving or not? If you are not leaving, I am taking the reins of this carriage." He looked at me deeply, then snatched the reins in one swift motion. "Wherever my wife goes, this coachman will drive there." A passing neighbor laughed and teased, "Miss Zhang, you two are such a young couple with such good looks. How did you end up running to this poor remote place?" I wiped the fine sweat from my forehead and smiled with curved eyes. "We were drifting duckweed with no fixed home before, but from now on, this place is home." Yan Wudu heard this, looked up at me, his eyes filled with tenderness and a smile that couldn't be dissolved. "That is right. Wherever she is, that is where Wudu belongs." He leaned close to my ear and asked in a voice only the two of us could hear, with a bit of roguishness, "What did you mean by that official pairing you mentioned at the inn before?" I pinched a piece of dough and smeared it directly on his cheek, suppressing my laughter. "You still have the nerve to bring that up. That day you tried to die on your own. If there is ever a next time, you can prepare to die alone." Yan Wudu wasn't annoyed either. Letting the flour stick to his face, he took out the most intact piece of lotus cake from the freshly steamed bamboo steamer and brought it to my lips. "You are right to lecture me, my lady. I won't dare do it again." He paused, his long, narrow peach blossom eyes filled with bright sunlight. "So, my official perfect match, are these pastries sweet?" I took a bite, and a light sweetness spread through my mouth. "Very sweet. The rest of our lives stretch long ahead. I only wish for today to repeat itself year after year." So what is the real message behind Zhang Wanning's incredible journey? This story is a brilliant deconstruction of the main character syndrome we see so often in life and in relationships. Pei Zhijing and Mu Qing believed they were the stars of the universe. In their minds, their grand, dramatic love story was so important that the feelings, livelihoods, and dignity of ordinary people, like Wanning, simply didn't matter. Pei Zhijing slapped his wife because, to him, she wasn't a real person with real feelings. She was just a prop in his tragic romance. He thought he could throw her away and pick her back up whenever it was convenient. How many of us have been treated like a supporting character in someone else's drama? How many of us have shrunk ourselves, worked ourselves to exhaustion, and accepted breadcrumbs of affection, just hoping that one day the person we love will finally make us their priority? But wanting teaches us the most empowering lesson of all. If someone treats you like a background character, you have the power to walk off their set and write your own story. She didn't try to win Pei Jing back. She didn't try to compete with Mu Qing. She realized that trying to prove your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you is a waste of your precious life. She took her recipe, her dignity, and her courage, and she built a life where she was the main character, and the poetic justice of Pei Jing's ending is absolute perfection. He rushes home, realizing too late that he actually loved the warmth and peace Wanning provided. He finds the empty house, the worn-out shoes she was making for him, and the moldy pastry he threw away. He sits on the floor, eating the dirty pastry, crying over the woman he lost. He realizes that the insignificant woman was actually the only real grounding love he ever had. Now, I want to turn this over to you because I know we have all had to walk away from people who didn't value us. Imagine you are Wanning, living your peaceful, happy life with your handsome new husband. If Pei Jing ever managed to track you down and begged on his knees for forgiveness, what would you do? Would you give him a piece of your mind and tell him exactly how much he ruined his own life? Or is the ultimate flex just smiling, handing him a pastry, charging him double, and acting like you barely remember his name? Drop your verdicts in the comments below. Are you team tell him off, or team unbothered queen? And if you've ever had to rewrite your own story after someone treated you like a background character, share your glow up in the comments. This is a safe space, and we love celebrating women taking their power back. If Wanning's journey from unloved prop to badass pastry queen gave you life today, share this video with a friend who needs a reminder to always be the main character of her own life. I am Liyue. Keep your boundaries strong and your pastries sweet, ladies. I'll see you in the next one.